Hello there, today's video is the third in my series of one-ship squads. The class we're covering today is easily the most requested since I started this series. It is, of course, the Interceptor. What's up, JD here. That's right, today's video we're going to be looking into potential builds for a viable all-interceptor team composition in Star Wars Squadrons. Now, if you've seen my previous two videos, you may have noticed that the ideas behind the fighter and bomber builds are very similar. This is in large part due to the fact that both fighters and bombers are quite good at adapting to anti-starfighter or anti-capital ship roles. If you're a relatively new player looking to run a one-ship squad, then they're probably your safest bets. An all-interceptor squad requires a big change in playstyle, and more than any other ship, I feel it needs you to be extremely proficient and comfortable with piloting your craft. The reason for this is that no matter the components you use, the interceptor class ships are always glass cannons. They're capable of inflicting great damage and outmaneuvering all opponents. But if you allow yourself to sit in your enemy's sights for more than a few seconds, then you're going to be looking at the respawn screen. Even so, I think that skilled pilots flying an all-interceptor squadron have a very good chance of scoring wins in fleet battles. Today I will put together both a morale farming and objective attacking build for each faction as normal, though stay tuned for the end because I'll let you know how I think these builds should be utilised, as you'll need to approach things differently to other ship types. With that in mind, let's dive right on in. As with all my videos, I'm putting these builds together with the Squadron build tool that was put together by Reddit user The Bumbag. I've included a link in the description, so be sure to check it out for yourself. You must also bear in mind that all the information was collated from the footage provided by the EA Game Changers when they got their hands on the game earlier this year. There will inevitably be some changes on launch, and you may need to adjust accordingly. Right then, I'm going to start by looking at the New Republic's Interceptor, the A-Wing. I have included timestamps in the description if you want to jump to Imperials or a build in particular. Right then, I have on screen at the moment the default stats for the A-Wing. You'll notice the shield and hull are much smaller than on all other crafts, but we have significantly more speed, acceleration, and manoeuvrability. Getting into the build though, let's start off with our choice of primary cannon. For the morale farmer, I think that the best choice is the rapid fire cannon. It's got a great damage per second, but at the cost of low range and short charge. It's ideal for quick hit and run flourishes where you identify your target, swoop in and take it out in one pass, and then move on to recharge lasers and find your next target. If you struggle to maneuver into a good range and position to make full use of the rapid fire cannon, and find you end up wasting shots, then it might be best to go for the standard cannon. You lose some damage per second, but you have a much better range and charge, so you can afford more misses. For our engine, I'm going to choose the Quad X propulsion engine. It's possible this might be nerfed somewhat on launch, but at the moment it boosts your acceleration for no drawbacks. This means you lose no speed or manoeuvrability, but the rate you can change speed from stationary to half speed to full speed is drastically improved, which is great in a build like this. Moving on to hull, and I've decided to take a risk here, but I think it will pay off with this build. I'm going to suggest the Reflect hull. You lose some of your already minimal hull health, but you can no longer be targeted past 1500 meters. This is extremely useful in an interceptor build. When you're dogfighting, you should be aiming to make swift passes on ships delivering max damage. If you don't take it out on that pass, then you should continue to speed off and get out of their range before they even realise what happened. Once safe, you can recharge lasers and shields if needed, before turning back and attempting a new run on an unsuspecting target. For our ship shields, I've decided to choose the Scrambler shields. This increases the time it takes for enemies to lock onto you, buying you the seconds you need to get out of range if you're in someone's sights. The drawback is, this only works if your shields are fully charged, plus your shields will not charge quite as fast. Our build is so minimal in shield that I think the drawback isn't huge. If we lose our shields, the likelihood is we're on our way out. Plus, we don't have much shield to regenerate, so the slower time to regen shouldn't be that noticeable. Now onto our auxiliaries. For the first auxiliary, I'm going to go with the Quick Lock missile. This is a great little anti-starfighter missile with a decent amount of uses. You get 8 missiles that you can fire off as you take swipes at enemy ships. Even if it doesn't hit, its high tracking is going to put them on the defensive, so you can focus on putting primary cannon rounds into them. For our right auxiliary, I'm going to go for the cluster missile. Another 5 anti-starfighter missiles to keep you pumping out damage before you need to go and resupply. These don't track as well, but they hit a little harder, so they're a good one to use on slower moving craft like bombers or support. Right, onto our countermeasures. And if you've watched my previous videos, I'm going to surprise you. I'm not going with Seeker warheads. I'm going for sensor inverters. In an A-wing, you should be able to break range or outfly and evade most missiles. But if you don't, and you're about to take a hit, go ahead and send that missile straight on back to its owner. And there you have it, our morale farming A-wing. Let's get the final stats up. We have 350 hull, 500 shields, 160 speed, 392 acceleration, and 80 maneuverability. As you can see, our health pool is exceptionally low. For reference, a standard primary cannon on a TIE fighter does 480 damage per second. So if you take 2 seconds of sustained fire, you're going to be looking at the respawn screen. With this build, you need to be moving in and out of that 1500 meter targeting range. Pick your targets and make high speed, high damage swipes, taking out at least one ship at a time. If you do this, you'll give yourself longevity and rack up morale for your team. Right, let's move on to the A-wing objective attacker. So for our primary weapon, I'm going to go straight for the ion cannon. Since you have no ion auxiliaries, it's crucial that you use your ion cannon to strip capital ship shields. Once you do this, then the morale farmers can get involved and use fast-paced primary cannon runs on the enemy capital ships to assist in bringing them down. Additionally, when you're at the stage where you attack the capital ship subsystems, your ion cannons will be more effective. For engine, I'm going to go for the thrust engine. You lose some acceleration and maneuverability, but become the second fastest ship in the game. The good thing about this is that if you need to be more maneuverable, you can come down to 50% thrust, which is the golden zone for maneuverability, and even then, you're faster than most bombers and support. For hull, I've gone for the standard hull, just to give you a bit more survivability, but you could also pick the reflect hull again. You have the speed to break target lock range quite quickly, so it might be worth the loss in health. For shields, I've again gone for standard just to keep high health with minimal drawbacks, though again, if you're confident you can avoid getting hit, then feel free to experiment with some of the others. For our first auxiliary, I'm going to choose the barrage rockets. You get 40 dumbfire rockets, and these will basically be your bombs. You can make high-speed attack runs on capital ships using your ion cannon, firing up to 4 of these rockets per second as you do so. They don't do a lot in the way of damage, but they do enough to be useful and they have a high ammo count, so they're worth taking. For our second auxiliary, I'm thinking the targeting jammer, though depending on exactly how it works on launch, you may be better off with something else. The description says that you can get closer to enemy ships without being attacked. Assuming that enemy ships includes capital ships, and assuming that you can get very close, then this could be an excellent addition to this build. Unlike a fighter or a bomber, you cannot make sustained bombing runs with shields to front and just tank damage. You need to make high speed runs and avoid getting hit at all. This might just help you do that, though with a 5-second duration, you'll need to time it right. Use the jammer as soon as you're getting into range, then launch forward, preferably at a boost, unleashing the full power of your ion cannons and barrage rockets before finishing your pass and speeding away back out of range into safety. Lastly, we have our countermeasures. As with the morale farmer, I think the sensor inverter is my preferred choice here. Right, now again, let's look at our final stats. We have hull 500, shields 500, speed 208, acceleration 137, and maneuverability 56. Let's also bring up the morale farmer stats to make a comparison. So our morale farmer is a touch more delicate, but can change speeds rapidly and maneuver better than most craft. The objective attacker has retained max possible health and is one of the fastest ships in the game, but is slightly less maneuverable than most ships. This can be nullified to an extent by dropping to 50% thrust, you'll be at peak manoeuvrability and still as fast as a lot of other ships, so be sure to decelerate and change direction as needed. Moving on though, let's take a look at the Imperial's TIE Interceptor. I've brought up the default stats on the screen now for you to take a look at. I'm also going to go through this build quite quickly because it is near identical to the A-Wing. At the end, I'll explain the thought process I think you should use to be as effective as possible using this team composition with either faction. Right, for our primary cannon, I'm going to go with the rapid fire cannon. Again, the intention is to get good damage per second. You have a low clip size though, so you need to get shots on target. If you can't, then switch over to the standard cannon. For the engine, I'm going to go for the twin propulsion engine. No drawbacks, but you can change speed rapidly, which is ideal for keeping targets in your sights and making difficult to follow maneuvers. For hull, as with the A-Wing morale farmer, I'd go for the reflect hull. You lose a big chunk of health, but can no longer be targeted outside of 1500 meters. With your high speed, you shouldn't have a problem breaking range when needed, so it should be worth the drop. As with the A-Wing morale farmer, this build is purely intended as an anti-starfighter ship, so for auxiliaries, I'd go with the cluster missile in addition to the anti-starfighter missiles. Between the two of these, you'll have 13 anti-starfighter missiles to help you rack up kills and keep the morale in your favour. For countermeasures, I'm with Varco Grey. The sensor inverter is the best choice. Well, that was a quick one. Let's look at the final stats. So we have hull 700, speed 170, acceleration 512, and manoeuvrability 85. Just like the A-Wing, this is another glass cannon build. You are fast and capable of outflying every ship, but if you slip up for more than 1 second and let someone get shots off on you, then you will 100% be blown out of the sky and have to await the respawn countdown. Let's move on to the objective attacker. For primary weapon, I'm again going to lean towards the iron cannon. It's essential in this team composition for putting damage on capital ships and capital ship shields. Additionally though, you can assist your morale farmers by stripping starfighter shields and disabling them, allowing your morale farmers to swoop in and take them out. For engine, we're going to go with the twin thrust engine. As with the A-Wing, we're going to focus on speed and hit and run tactics with this build. For hull on this build, I'm thinking standard. We're at risk of taking fire when we make runs on the larger ships and need to maintain as much health as possible. Though feel free to try out the other options as well and see if maybe they work better for you. For auxiliaries, as with the A-Wing objective attacker, I think a mix of onslaught rockets and a targeting jammer would be most useful in this build. We can use the targeting jammer to make our lightning fast approach on capital ships before letting rip with the onslaught rockets and our iron cannon for as much damage as possible. Finally, for countermeasures, I'm still sticking with the sensor inverter. This is exclusive to interceptors and it is a great way to troll the opposing team. There's nothing more embarrassing than having your own missile come back and take you out. Right, let's look at the final set of stats. We have hull 1000, speed 221, acceleration 179, and manoeuvrability 60. And if we also bring up our morale farmer stats to form a comparison, we can see that the differences between these builds are essentially identical to the differences between the A-Wings. Our morale farmer can change speed and direction quickly with a decent top speed and low health. Our objective attacker is faster, though less able to change speed and direction, with marginally more health. If we bring up all 4 ships, we can also do a bit of cross-faction analysis. When we look at both factions' interceptor stats, it's clear to see that if speed is what you're after, you'll achieve it with the Imperials. Both of the TIE Interceptor builds are faster and more manoeuvrable than their New Republic counterparts. The main drawback, however, is the lack of shields. If the A-Wings sustain some damage but aren't destroyed, then they can disengage from the battle quick enough and regain their shields. Depending on how much they lost, this might put them back at full strength relatively quickly, so they can get stuck in again. But if the Imperials lose some hull, they either have to make do, return to the hangar, or use their frigates. Alternatively, they can also take a repair component, but doing so takes up an auxiliary slot. Right, regarding how you might put this team composition to use, I would recommend the following. So first of all, you probably don't need to stray from a composition of 2 objective attackers with 3 morale farmers. When you enter the dogfight phase, I would recommend pairing up an objective attacker with a morale farmer, then having the third morale farmer free flow between the pairs. The faster objective attacker can use their targeting jammers and launch aggressive swipes at groups of ships whilst unleashing their ion cannons to potentially disable the enemy starfighters. Meanwhile, the morale farmer can flank in and use a combination of primary cannon fire and missiles to finish things off. After each run, it would be best to put some distance between you and any leftover enemy ships so that you can avoid damage and regroup for the next run. This strategy should keep you from getting shot down whilst maintaining a consistent build-up of morale. If you keep that up, before long you should be able to move in on the frigates and capital ships. At this stage, your morale farmer's primary concern should be keeping enemy starfighters off of your accompanying corvette. Neither build has truly effective anti-capital ship weapons, so you want to get the most out of your corvette in each attacking stage. When attacking the enemy frigates, your objective attackers can make repeated runs, one after the other, using their ion cannons to strip the shields. Once the shields are no more, then all 5 ships can begin to make runs on the frigates to rack up damage as fast as possible. Just don't forget to keep an eye on your corvette as well. When you come to the flagship, then follow the same plan as the frigates, but be sure to focus on the subsystems so that you can achieve max damage and score the win as soon as possible. If you're playing an all-interceptor team against a regularly balanced team, you have to take into consideration that whenever you're on the defence, the enemy might be able to damage your capital ships quicker than you can damage theirs. To make sure you get that win, you need to deny them the ability to make any bombing runs. This is where your strength is. Even your objective attacking builds are capable of anti-starfighter combat. You need to make every effort to maintain air superiority at all times. If you can do that, then you can absolutely win games and put a lot of stress on your opponents. And there you have it, my all-interceptor team build and strategy. I'd love to know what you thought of this. Will you be giving it a go with your friends? If you like this video and want to see more of this kind of thing, then be sure to subscribe to my channel. My next video in this series will take a look at the support class. I've also already made videos on the fighters and bombers, so be sure to check those out if you haven't already. With that said though, I thank you very much for watching this video, and as always, I've been JD, this is Nerd Herd Gaming, and I'll see you in my next video.